What's up, everybody? I'm Caleb Ochoa, also known as NFL Caleb 22, and this is Ben NFL week number 14. And as always, here with me is my co-host Derek Weatherly, also known as DWeezy. What's going on, man?
Man, back ready to get into it. We got the holidays creeping up on us. I mean, we're basically three-quarters of the way through the season already. It's flown by. It was just the other day that, we was talking about, week one, week two, and here we are, week 14 already? It's insane how fast the football season goes around. But here we are, ready to dive into these plays and trying to make these people a little bit more money.
Yeah, but there's still plenty of opportunity to make some money. Still have 5 more weeks left in the regular season, and then we got the playoffs, and we'll be here right with you to take you through all the way to the Super Bowl, making our picks, trying to get some money in your pockets. Before we can do that, we have to go back and see what we did last week and recap week number 13. We'll start with what happened with the trends, and the dogs were hitting. The dogs were barking, and they hit it at 10-6 against the spread. The road dogs were definitely hitting 6-3 against the spread. And then away teams 9-7 had a winning week against the spread, and home dogs were 4-3. As far as the over unders, it is completely 50-50. There is no trend. It's just a back and forth week to week type of thing for the overs and unders. One week it's overs, one week it's unders. It was unders last week, 9 unders to 7 overs. So I would predict go with the overs next week because that's just what it is.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to say to, a certain level of zigzag theory. You definitely see it more often in, baseball, basketball, sports where you got more games being played. But if the numbers are, showing it to be true, nothing says it might not be worth taking a stab at.
All right, we'll go to what we did last week. So what's up, my dad? Um, and my record, I a great week, almost perfect, nearly perfect. At 4-1 record. Um, I would like to say my best bet was the Cowboys getting the big upset win, but it was not that because the Bengals had an even bigger upset. And I did have them at +7 on the road against the Ravens. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't just an upset. I mean, it was a blowout. And it was, and I like this pick for the exact reasons you were saying last week about Lamar Jackson. And, he hadn't been winning, they've been winning games. He hadn't been looking good doing it. And he didn't play well in this game at all. Again, and he's dealing with some injuries and it's affecting his play. Turned the ball over 3 times, and yeah, it just went all bad for the Ravens. And like I said, I knew they were gonna shoot themselves in the foot, make their own mistakes, and that's why I like the Bengals. I thought they'd still win, but I like the Bengals to keep it close just from the Ravens' own mistakes, and they just outright kicked their ass in this one. So that was a great win for me. But yeah, how did you do in week 13?
Well, 3 weeks in a row winning record, folks. I believe that's what you call a trend.
Yeah,
Now, like we say, we're here to try and make the people some money. My man went
we've
four
been
and
doing
one.
it. We've been doing it for the
Exactly.
past few weeks.
Exactly. So I hope the people been out there, been, at least tailing some of the information. I do know of one viewer that happened to take a couple of my plays last week. Well, one play indirectly going with a Stafford prop instead of, the touchdown parlay I had with the Rams, which
Yeah.
happened to cash. I
And
believe that was
JJ took
plus.
the Cowboys when I because he believed in what I was saying about us. So
Exactly.
we're
And
winning people money.
exactly. And so, looking at this past week, 3-2, as far as best play from, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And I got to go to the Monday night game. Needed Drake May over 29 and a half pass attempts. Late in the game, roughly about 4 or 5 minutes left in the game, they're driving, trying to run out the clock. Now, this Patriots offense does like to utilize the pass offense a little bit more than the run, even later in some of these games when they have a lead. Definitely plays in my favor. Now, what do we see take place? We see a deep 30-yard bomb for a TD, but wait, it's wiped off offsetting penalties. And because of that, we got the extra pass attempts that we needed to cash on this prop. And so, like I said, folks, sometimes it is better to be lucky than good. We had a situation where we handicapped it almost down to the wire, and it came in for us. Drake made 31 passing attempts, and everybody knows 31 is greater than 29 and a half.
Yeah, we talked about the good, so we got to talk about the bad. And there was just one bad pick. It wasn't even that bad of a pick considering I did get the winning team. They just did not cover the spread. The Saints at the Dolphins -6. Um, and yeah, they just couldn't quite cover the spread there. This was just a killer beat. The Dolphins were up 16 points going into the second half, and they just let the Saints kind of slowly come back into the game. And the Dolphins really didn't score touchdowns in the second half. They were scoring field goals, and the Saints got that backdoor cover, and that's what I hate. I was talking about last week too. Backdoor cover kills me, and it killed me again because the Dolphins just couldn't. They just needed one stop on the Saints' last touchdown drive, and man, when I saw that, it just ruined. It literally was the last game I was waiting for. Considering I picked like a lot the Thursday games and the Friday game, it was even though it was like a morning game for me, it was the last game I had to watch, and then they just couldn't stop them, and it ruined my perfect week. So that was a killer, and that's
Yeah, unfortunately, did have two losses last week. Got to go with McConkey failing to cover his receiving number, 51 and a half. Unfortunately, saw him fall about 12, 13 yards short of that. Late in this game, there was a chance for a hookup, a deep pass, not 100% sure on the distance, but somewhere in the range of about 15 yards, probably enough to get us just over the number. And unfortunately, we weren't able to see that one get hauled in. And so, unfortunately, falling just short on a receiving prop that seemed on the low side. And apparently, the books knew what they were talking about on this one.
all right. That will and a recap of week number 13. Before we get into this week's bets, if you guys can go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. If you really want to help us out, you can join our Patreon. The link is in the description down below. We would very much appreciate it, as we appreciate you all for watching and tuning in. But now we will get into our 5 best bets of the week. And I'm going to start it off since I had the bet record. Um, I mean, how can I not go right off the bat with the Dallas Cowboys once again? I mean, come on. I mean, I picked them for the last 3 weeks, and they hit every single week since the bye week, since we made all those transactions, getting those players back from injury, and we haven't looked back, man. We look great. And I felt that last week we were even disrespected by the odds makers, being a 3 point underdog at home on Thanksgiving. Completely disrespectful. But again, we find ourselves the underdog again. The Dallas Cowboys are getting 3 points, this time on the road, which means they think that the Lions and Dallas Cowboys are basically even on a neutral field. The Lions are getting that 3 point home field advantage. But I don't know. I don't feel like we're even, especially with the Cowboys, how the Cowboys have been playing and how the Lions have been playing. I mean, we've been on the uptick as they kind of been downsliding a little bit, coming off a bad loss to the rival on Thanksgiving at home against the Packers. This, and then they did a lot of injuries. They're dealing with injuries on their offensive line. They're dealing with they just put their cornerback on IR, and they don't know if they're going to have their best receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown for this game. He's still questionable, so we'll see if he will be able to play. But that makes them rely more, if he is out, rely more on the running game and giving the ball to Gibbs and Montgomery. But the Cowboys have a run defense now. I mean, we can stop the run. Cowboys have only allowed 69.7 rushing yards per game during our 3 game win streak. So I think we definitely can limit their effectiveness that they will have on us. And Lions, on the other side, the Lions have allowed 29 points per game in the last 3 games, and Cowboys have scored 30 plus points 7 times this season. So our offense is rolling, their defense is not. Cowboys 8-1 the last 9 Thursday games. We are fantastic on Thursday games. Only loss was that week 1 game against the Eagles. We are great in Thursday games. 6-3 against the spread against in those games. 6-1 straight up in the last 7 games versus the Lions. So we beat the Lions a lot, and the Lions are 1-4 against the spread in the last 5 games. So I mean, it's not the typical Thursday game because both teams did play on that Thanksgiving, so you have a week rest. So basically, it's your typical Sunday night game. But overall, I think everything points. We're gonna keep rolling. We're gonna win out. We're gonna win this game outright. But if they're gonna give us the points, take them.
Yeah, with this Cowboys team, I mean, you're going to have to go out there and stop them. And until somebody does, the way this offense is humming along, it's a scary team to go up against. You know, even when my Panthers faced off against the Cowboys, it was a lot of the same things that we heard, and they were able to go out there and put up points. And unfortunately, in that game, it was the defense that didn't hold up for you. And that offense has consistently stayed at about that same level, and we've seen the defense pick up. The additions, at the trade deadline and those moves that we saw have definitely helped bulk up this defense. You know, and you mentioned the run game, which at the beginning of the year was non-existent, and like you said, over the past 3 games, this has been a different run game. And that's exactly why I'm going with my first prop with David Montgomery under 33.5 rush yards in this game. Now, in the last 10 games, he's gone 7-3 to the under on his prop. And I think that really stands out in a matchup like what we're going to see with the Dallas Cowboys, where, like I said, for the majority of the season, we kind of looked at this team that had a deficiency in the run defense game, and that hasn't been the case the past few weeks. Trends are your friends. You want hot teams. You want units that are playing at their best, that are playing in rhythm. And currently, that's what we're seeing out of Dallas on the defensive side of the ball in the run game. And that's exactly why I'm going with this under, where, yes, the prop and the number isn't very high, which does, raise the risk that we see Montgomery get over this number potentially on a big run. But there's also the chance that we see Gibbs take over a bit in this game and not to say hog, but definitely gobble up a lot of those carries available out there. And the less times Montgomery touches the ball in this game, the better for an underplay.
I will say what's up to A6 Ghost. Great to have you here. Um, Now I get to my second bet of the week. I'm taking the Seahawks -7 at the Falcons. Seahawks coming off that shutout win over the Vikings. Even though it was against an undrafted rookie free agent. But and they didn't. The last time I picked them, they didn't cover, but they did cover some other times that I picked them. They've been pretty dominant on defense. They are looking to get the division still within reach since the Rams loss, and they can still stay on pace with the Rams. Falcons got an ugly loss to the Jets last week, which pretty much eliminated them from anything. With that loss, they don't really have much to play for going forward. Seahawks, as an offense need to get right. Even coming off a shutout win, they didn't play that great. So I think this Falcons team that is the perfect team to get right against. Seahawks have been a great road team this season. The just I think they've only lost one game. Seahawks go off in this game, embarrass the Falcons. Seahawks 5-1 against the spread on the road, 9-3 overall. 6-1 in the last set, and then 6-1 last seven games. So great covering team. So definitely, even though it's some point spread, like the Seahawks.
Yeah, like you said, this is a Seahawks team that has excelled when coming to the East Coast. A trend that typically, we don't see out of West Coast teams, and the Seahawks have been able to flip that right on its head. I've even heard jokes that, there's been some talks of can they get their West Coast games played at 10 a.m., since that would, almost be 1 o'clock p.m.
Yeah,
So, yes, there are some concerns when it comes to the Seahawks offense. Concerns that may not show up in this game. Definitely something to keep an eye on in the future. A big note that I took away from their past game, even though it was a shutout, I believe we didn't see that offense score a touchdown until late in the fourth quarter, and that's really not what you want to see out of a team that could potentially be a number one seed, number two seed. Um, so definitely something to watch out for. Like you said, this is definitely a prime get right opportunity for the Seahawks. They excel at coming to the East. They're taking on, a bottom tier team currently with the Atlanta Falcons, a team that's been, beat up a little bit, got injuries sprinkled around all over the place. So, you know, I could have some confidence in the Seahawks this week, but moving forward, there's definitely some things that I would keep an eye on when it comes to this team. Now, going into my next play, going to another running back that has seen better days, but has still found a place to excel in Kansas City, and going with Kareem Hunt over 34 and a half rushing yards. Now, he's been able to clear his number in 5 straight games, and he's gone over his rushing prop 8 of the last 10 games. You know, these are things you like to see. You want to find that, those props in those plays where you're definitely seeing a lot of consistency. We've seen his rushing prop be around this number uh, consistently, maybe a tick up or down a little bit. But like I said, when you're talking about a player and an offense where they've been able to achieve the over consistently, that's what you're looking for. And going into this week, taking the over 34 and a half rushing yards for Kareem Hunt.
that's a tough one. They're going up against a really good defense, really relentless defense with Texans. But I mean, it's more of their pass rush. I don't know how great their run defense is, but um, yeah. But I'll get to my third bet of the week, and I'm gonna go ahead and take the Bengals +6 at the Bills. Um, with how lackluster the AFC North is, the Bengals still have a chance to win it, even at 4-8. But they need to win every game to do so. That means they still have something to play for coming to this game, putting it all on the line because they can't lose. And with Burrow back, they look pretty good against the Ravens. Bengals are 2-0 straight up against the Bills with Burrow, and in those games he averages 295 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Josh Allen, on the other hand, only averages about 261, and 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Um, so even if the Bills do win, I can't see that it's gonna be like some big game because obviously Josh Allen's had some turnover problems this season. Back to his old ways. He's had a lot put on him because they don't have the weapons. So even though the Bengals do have a pretty crappy defense, I don't know if they really have the weapons on their side to exploit that. So I like the Bengals and Joe Burrow to keep it close, and maybe even outright win, but definitely covering that 6 point spread. Bengals 5-1 against the spread in the last 6 games versus Buffalo. So I think they can. I think they could match up against them.
Yeah, this was a matchup that I did take a look at. There's been some question marks about this Buffalo defense throughout this season, and we've seen multiple teams go out there and put up points. And from a prop perspective, that definitely gives some potential insight to things that might take place. Unfortunately, with Joe Burrow, still fresh back from injury, I think it's a little difficult to try and predict what we're going to get out of them. But I could completely get behind a scenario where the Bengals not only keep this game close, but potentially find themselves in a position to possibly win it. Um, as I've said with this defense, the question marks they've had. If you can go out there and put up points on them, it doesn't matter if Josh Allen goes out and puts up 35 points if you can get 38. That's the way the game works. So when you're talking about, the possibility behind what Jamar Chase. I'm not 100% sure if we'll see T. Higgins back for this game. I think there is a possibility that we do see him return, which only adds to the weapons available. We're talking about a Buffalo defense that has struggled against the run. We could see maybe a breakout game for Chase Brown, who has been almost non-existent this season. Now going into my next play, um, you know, I was on with the Rams last week, and I'm gonna stick with the Rams this week. Going to, kind of left them out last week, so come on, Puka. We're going with Puka Nakua over on his receiving prop. Now I'm bumping the number up, you know, 99 and a half. We need that cool 100. Give me that Wilt Chamberlain. Let me see that 100. Yes, this is a Cardinals defense that has had its struggles against the pass, but unfortunately they are going up against one of the best offenses in the league. Last week, yes, they did catch the loss in that game, but it's hard to put that on the offense. Yes, the turnovers by Stafford definitely didn't help, but when your team gives up 31 points, it's hard to be mad at your offense when they scored 28 points in return. Now, yes, they did have a chance late. Stafford fumble, which led to the loss in that game. But from a prop perspective, you still like what you saw from the passing game and the offense and the ability to move the ball downfield, even with the multiple turnovers that we saw in this game. So, Puka, the deep threat that he is, sees multiple targets a game. He's had 5 games with at least 95 or more yards this season, 8+ targets in 4 of the last 5 games. So the potential for not only to rack up a big play, 30, 40-yard catch, maybe even longer. We got the repetition when it comes to the receptions, only adding to the potential that he breaks a, 8-yard slant for 20, 25 yards. And when you can rack up plays like that, yes, it is a high number, but we're talking about one of the few wide receiver QB combos out there that can legitimately make this number very easy to reach.
Well, I'm definitely hoping for that because I need to win to get into the playoffs on my fantasy team. So I have Puka on one of them. So definitely hoping you win your bet, but kind of for my own reasons. All right, we'll get to my third bet of the week, and I got the Commanders plus 1.5 at the Vikings. Um, it's actually surprising that the Vikings are actually favored, even though they're at home. Um, and because I mean they just look horrible. They look horrible against against the last week getting shut out. Like my goodness, against the Seahawks. Um, so yeah, I mean it's still up in the air whether Jaden Daniels will return for this one. There is a chance he will. But even if he even doesn't, Marcus Mariota has played pretty well for a backup. They nearly upset the Broncos last week. Took them all the way to overtime. They just couldn't get the 2-point conversion to actually win the game. So if they can go up against a defense like that, I know the Vikings also have a good defense, but they played well against another good defense. I think they can do the same thing here. The Vikings QB situation is absolutely terrible. Brosman was awful. JJ McCarthy hasn't really been any better either. So Vikings are on a 4 game losing streak where their QBs have averaged 135.8 yards passing per game. That's pretty damn bad. Washington defense has been kind of disappointing, but after the last game, I can't see how the Vikings score any points against anybody. I don't care what defense they're going up against. Um, Vikings 1-6 against the spread last 7 games. Yeah, I honestly think that the wrong team's even favored in this one. So yeah, if they're gonna give us a point and a half on the Commanders side, I'll take it.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on here with the books because after what we saw last week, there is zero reason why this Vikings team should be favored at all, unless there is some robot being put in at the QB position that we don't know about. I see no reason to try and back this team. Coming fresh off a shutout where we saw quite possibly the most awful QB performance of the season. Yes, it's a rookie. You know, a lot of logical explanations why things happened the way they did, but when we're talking about this team this week, yes, taking on a struggling team in Washington, but like you said, whether we see Daniels out there or not, there's a lot of things that lead you to believe that Washington is the team that's going to walk away with the victory in this game. That being said, how can you do anything other? Well, I mean, yes, plus 1.5 is tempting, but in this instance, I would lean towards the money line. You're probably looking at plus 120, plus 130, something like that. You know,
Well,
no,
I only took it because they literally lost by 1 point last week. So I'll take the point and a half where I can get it.
valid point, but it is a very rare situation that you do see a team lose by 1 point, even 2 points. But that could be changing in this more modern day area where we see more coaches going for 2 point conversions. Not to say routinely, but definitely with a higher frequency than we've ever seen before. And not to say that all of it's bad, but when you look at some of these numbers, they're based off of trends and ideologies from 20, 30 years ago. You know, 2 point conversions were non existent back then. Now, you can almost count on seeing one or two, not to say every game, but over the course of every week. I'd be shocked if there were less than 5 2 point conversion attempts every week throughout the NFL.
Yeah.
All right, going into my next play, this is another team that's been hot. First year head coach, rookie head coach Ben Johnson has really turned around the Bears, and honestly, this is something I expected. Didn't necessarily expect to see some of the turnaround in year one, but I think that's what we're really starting to see, not only out of this team, but the coaching staff themselves. The team's buying into the system. You come off a big win like what we saw last week, and the reaction to the team, or the reaction from the team, towards the head coach, Ben Johnson's shirtless, and the team's loving it. I mean, that's what you want to see out of your team. That's the mentality that you want to see in a locker room, especially in an organization where they are trying to turn things around. And going into this week, I like Caleb Williams over 17 and a half completions. Green Bay's defense is 21st in completions given up and completion percentage. Caleb Williams has averaged 19 completions this season. Nothing eye popping, but maybe this number is just a tad bit too low. We're talking about an offense that is definitely picking up speed over the past few weeks, and a Green Bay team that, outside of last week, we've seen some serious struggles from and some serious questions out of Green Bay along the lines of their legitimacy as one of the top teams in the NFC. So, all things said, like Williams in the spot. Not to say he's going to go out there and, complete the 25, 30 passes, but I definitely think we can get over this 17 and a half.
All right. I'll get into my final bet of the week. I got the Colts at the Jaguars. Jaguars are getting point and a half. And yeah, you could say money line, but I just love taking points, even if you're
Money
going to get one
line.
point. I love taking the points. The Colts are, they're in big trouble. They have a tough schedule ahead of them. Tough matchup in this one, going on the road in a divisional game, and they haven't looked good in weeks. Their biggest weapon, Jonathan Taylor, has been contained. He's been limited to 80 rushing yards per game in the last 2 weeks. Daniel Jones has regressed from how he was playing earlier in the season. He's making more mistakes. He's had the injuries, and the Colts 3-4 in one score games, so it's not. And so the odds makers saying this is going to be a close game, and his record is not too good in those type of games. The Jaguars on a 3-game win streak and have the league's top rushing defense to further limit Jonathan Taylor's effectiveness. It will be close. It might even be ugly, but I like the home team in this one. Colts 2-9 against the spread last not 11 games against the Jaguars. They are 0-9 when they play in Jacksonville, straight up. So they're not going to. That's going to continue. They're not winning in Jacksonville because they just haven't done it in years. So uh, take the Jags at home because that's just what happens.
Yeah, there is no way I'm getting behind the Colts in any matchup going forward, really. Like you just said, we're talking about Daniel Jones. Um, Basically going to have to be the key for this offense moving forward. And unfortunately, given the injuries and just some of the regression we've seen, that spells disaster for this team moving forward. Because if teams can just load up on the run, put 8, 9, 10 guys in the box, and force you to throw the ball in a situation where it's legitimate question, how hobbled is your quarterback? Cracked fibula, broken fibula, these are not terms you want to hear when talking about your starting quarterback. And though his mobility wasn't a main factor in their offense, it was definitely a piece of the offense that helped move things along, whether that be, RPOs, a designed run, just being able to move out of the pocket and extend the play. These are things that are going to be lost as long as we're talking about him dealing with this fibula issue. So, yeah, no way can I get behind the Colts this week, or at least in the near future moving forward. Might even be a team to look to fade for a first round playoff loss if we do see them in the
Might not
playoffs
even
at
make
all.
it.
Yeah, exactly. So, not big on the Colts, but I'm going to go to the team that used to be the Colts, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. They let me down the other week. Still got some questions around Lamar Jackson's health. They're talking about a toe injury now. Before it was a hamstring. Definitely a lot of things going on. We've seen the Baltimore organization fined a couple of times behind um, not adhering to the mandates of the injury reports as far as submitting them and accurate information, if I'm not mistaken. So, looking to lean on somebody that could benefit from less involvement from Lamar Jackson in the running game, and that's going with Derrick Henry over 82.5 rush yards in this game. Now, yes, it is a rivalry game, but we are also talking about a Pittsburgh defense that finds themselves slightly banged up, especially in their front seven. We see Highsmith, or not Highsmith, Well, I believe Highsmith might be dealing with an injury or two, but Wyatt's definitely been dealing with injury. Or excuse me, Watt's been dealing with injury this season. Um, he's not 100% healthy. We see Patrick Queen banged up a little bit. You know, a couple other places, not necessarily starters, but definitely attacking that depth. And one thing we've seen out of Derrick Henry over the years, he is that bruiser, and that's something that hasn't faded even as he's gotten on the north side of 30 these past couple of years. And so I'm looking for him to play more of that grinder running back role where we might not see him break off a 40, 50-yard run in this game, though he still has the speed and ability to do so. I do think we see him get somewhere in the range of 20 attempts, maybe 22, pick up 3, 4 yards, smash mouth football, maybe, some old school AFC North football, getting over that number, going over 82.5 rushing yards in this game.
And I thought you were gonna go with the newly signed man in Mark Andrews. I mean, just got a new deal. That's where you were heading.
Man, I mean, to be honest, this is the type of move that shows some of the incompetence that takes place in the front office of the Baltimore Ravens. And there's no other way to put it. I mean, he's an aging player. His production level has been on a decline at minimum this year. Um, yes, he's a bit of a fan favorite, but who honestly sees Mark Andrews being a productive piece of any offense 3 years from now?
Apparently they do because they give him some money to produce, and well, they're gonna find out.
I need the Baltimore Ravens to take some insight on this show. You can bring us into the fold and give us some of this love that y'all giving people like Mark Andrews, like, because if you ain't got to do the job and still get all the perks, yeah, I'll sign
No,
up for that.
86 Ghost says he's not a fan favorite.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the other thing. I mean, yes, there are portions of the fan base that are still infatuated with him. He's not the player that he was, and that's not to say that he was even a dominant player. Yes, he had his highs in his career, but I definitely think we're seeing Mark Andrews on the decline of his career, and that was I thought it was a joke at first, and I honestly had to scroll back to see. Oh,
So no prop bet for him, man.
yeah, no, no, no Andrews props ever.
Okay. All right. Well, if that's all our bets, that'll be our show. Hopefully, you guys get your
Well,
bets.
you know what you wanted to ask me about Andrews. Let's talk about some people that could potentially, actually make some people some money. Unless you're playing unders, then maybe you got a shot with Andrews. But you hear me talk about it a lot. Trends,
Hmm.
hot players. Jackson Smith and Jigba, David Hn. There's a number, a couple of players out there where you know maybe potentially seeing a little bit higher juice on their prop because we've seen these players clear their props, multiple weeks in a row. Matthew Stafford is another one going over the 1.5 passing TD prop. I mean, to the point where we're seeing 2.5s in a lot of places. Um, so yeah, don't be afraid of these trends. We got a lot of players out here. Touched on some of them in some of my plays. You're looking for that consistency. You're looking for that delivering week to week. And, there's a number of different angles out here, number of different, players I've used in the past. Still hot. Like I said, JSN, HN.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, we saw St. Brown go down. But, playing off that concept of attacking some of these high powered offenses with a TD parlay where You're talking about a player by himself minus 200, paired up with another player that's minus 160, minus 170. Together, you're talking about plus 150, plus 175. And when you can get those plus numbers, they can really work out good for you.
Yeah, and the one trend I thought I see, carrying over from last week to this week is the underdogs. Man, I hit on a lot of underdogs, and it's because I mean the numbers were great. I mean, I did like I really feel like the odds makers like messed up last week. I'm like, damn, you really giving all these points, and I feel the same way this week. I mean, a lot of the I took a lot of underdogs this week. I only took one favorite. In my five best bets, but I really feel like that's going to continue because I don't know. I think they're just giving a lot of points to some teams that I think can cover. So yeah, I definitely like the underdogs this week. Obviously, you can see as for my bets, and that's one trend from last week that will carry through this week. But now that will be our show, and you can tell everybody where they can find you, DWeezy.
Yeah, the folks can reach me at the Yard Bets on Twitter. You know, the LGR website with articles on a variety of things. Also, keep your notifications on because there's shorts coming out from good friends, better rivals. More betting angles, not only football, diving into some other sports as well. So definitely a lot of content and a lot of information coming out for the people to get.
And you can find me at NFL Caleb 22 on Instagram and Twitter side checks. And you can find me on this channel on Fridays, talking Cowboys, talking Giants on Good Friends, Better Rivals with Ferris. And hopefully, we'll be talking about a win against the Lions. And, we'll be talking about the Giants getting their ass kicked by the Patriots as well. At least we don't have to talk about, a game next week because they have a bye. So you can look forward to that. So go ahead and watch that. And yeah, we'll be here next week. Trying to put money in your pocket. And like I always say, let's get ready to make that money.
For Pete, man.